Hello, I'm David Hunt and welcome to my little section of this brilliant show on Channel 31. It's called Bed TV. My guest today is a visual artist. She's incredible. Her mind, I really get excited about people like this because what their mind comes up with, and we look at it and visually we get excited, but to come up with the idea, we'll talk about that a little bit later. She's got a PhD, of course, so she's a doctor. Ooh, she's really important. She has created exhibitions and internationally in some of the most incredible situations: Antarctic, Paris, London, Ireland, Iceland, and installations in Saint-Tropez, Boston, Beijing, Toronto, just to name a few, and a brilliant exhibition last year at the Victorian Pride Centre down in St Kilda, where I am on Joy. The Joy Studios are there as well. So much going on. Lisa Anderson, hello.
Hello, David. What an amazing intro.
Oh, my pleasure. Now, let's go right back to the beginning. Where are you from? Are you a Melbourne girl?
No, I'm not from Melbourne. I'm from Queensland.
Oh, okay.
Southeast Queensland, so kind of Ipswich, it's called.
Right,
I don't often admit that.
Why?
It's more famous for Pauline Hanson than it is
Oh,
for its arts input.
Yeah, I understand now. I understand. So you grew up there?
Yeah, I grew up there. I was one of a number of kids, and it was a rural upbringing, so kind of blockies really, that edge of the town. In fact, the little town where I grew up doesn't exist anymore.
Oh,
so
wow.
it's,
Wow.
it's gone. But it was very near the airbase.
Right.
And Amberley Air Base. And we had things like Young Flyers Club, and you got a little badge and stuff, and you got to go around the base and do things. I could ride in Chinooks, were my favourite helicopter to ride in.
Wow.
So, and they'd let you do all sorts of things like climb in the cockpits of jets. Don't touch anything, but you get to climb in the cockpit and things like that. And I remember things like, I'm somewhat older, so I remember the F-111s arriving. One of the things was, usually you could just walk into a hangar with planes, like you'd be escorted in. But this one, they had these entrances that the glass doors opened. That was like, we were gobsmacked by this. The glass doors opened. You stood inside a vacuum thing, and the air underneath this grill pulled all the dirt off you, off your feet and stuff.
Oh,
so
I thought it was a security thing. It was a dust thing.
A bit of both,
right.
But it was also the dust. And so as kids, we found this just extraordinary. We'd all fling ourselves out on the grid.
So in a way, like my mind was ticking over, it is what you do as an artist in a way, that inspiration of throwing yourself down, with the dust being blown off you and sitting in a cockpit of a plane. That's what your mind's, taking us on a journey with. How do you describe yourself as an artist?
Really, I play with ideas, and particular things interest me and have always interested me. Landscape, which of course leads to environmental concerns, which is perhaps weighted more heavily more recently, and certainly with research expedition work that I've done with different ships usually around the world, and that's been fascinating and quite challenging. But so I make ideas and feed them through a filter like folklore elements and play with those until I can find something that elucidates the idea. And it could end up being a neon work, it could be a video, it could be a performance.
Video is a big thing, isn't it? Because you can film it and then show people what you've created, I suppose. Is that?
That's part of it, because, and I'll often make films or video using stills and other kinds of techniques. So they become very story-based, not narrative-based, but story-based. So if that makes sense.
Yeah. And performance, live performance stuff. You often do it out at the convent, don't you?
I did do a piece out there. and developed a costume for it because I like to make the costumes.
Oh, do you make them yourself as well?
Yeah,
Right.
so they're the fabrics. I design the fabrics and have the fabrics printed,
Yeah.
and then make the costumes out of those.
So can you sew and you know,
No, it's all hot glue gun, darling.
because it's not going to last, you know.
Learned
yeah.
with drag kings back in the day. Everything's a hot glue gun.
Brilliant, brilliant.
So it was. There was one particular costume that I was making for a video that I was making for Beguiling, I think, for the Victorian Pride Centre. And I made these costumes and then realised they'd actually be good Mardi Gras costumes. And this friend of mine who, Pip Playford, who's quite a well-known float designer, said, well, wear them in our things. So Jane and I, my wife and I, wore them for the World Pride
Oh, right.
thing.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we wore them. We weren't the ones in the video, though. They were two young dancers who performed in them in the videos. But we wore them and they were just fabulous. They were great to wear and they're still good fun. I've got them in a suitcase somewhere. I'll pull them out at some point.
Yeah. Until they start falling to bits because the glue is...
The glue eventually goes.
Yeah, it goes. But what I also love about what you're doing is you're very now with technology as well, like neon. Some of the pieces you've done that I've seen, your neon. So you're moving forward a lot with your art, aren't you?
All those things are there for us to play with. Like the latest one, I use more AI than I've used before, in a playful kind of way. Because there's a thing about AI and landscape where there's a current position that our landscape is being curated for us by AI. So what we're seeing isn't real anymore. It's an AI version of it when you go online and you see these things.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about it and looking back at old ship maps, like, from the 1600s and things. And they'd have monsters off in the side doing all this stuff, and
the wind monster blowing.
The wind would be blowing. These things that come out of the deep, and then you look at like old Dura prints when someone described to him what a rhinoceros looked like, and so there'd be these drawings of these really weird things, beautiful drawings. So in fact, the fake has always been there. Fake is a part of how we see the world. That's how we explore it. So in fact, AI is a version of those maps.
Yep.
It's a warning. It's a discussion of things like moral panic. It's a discussion of
and a ship getting to the end of the earth and like ready to fall off, and like I love seeing some of them from hundreds of years ago as well.
And then you get to see them in AI too, because someone obviously tells their AI, "Can you make me a video of the last 30 seconds of the ship going up
over the edge?" Here you are still in Queensland. Coming out, did you do that in the small town where you were growing up?
Not really. I think I was outed at school and I didn't know what they were talking about, really. And it was pretty odd, but basically I was a bit of a loner because of that, and discovered, libraries really early in the piece, and they let me do anything in the local library. So that was really good. And pretty much a loner at school, was always on the edge of things.
So when did you realise that you were?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well,
I spent a lot of
same.
time attempting to be straight.
Yep. Well, I think we've all done that, our age group.
Yeah. So it's just one of those sorts of things. And, I dated women, I dated men. I married a man.
Okay.
Very nice man. We're still friends. When I met my wife some 20 odd years ago, it was like, this woman gets me. This woman she's just so smart and so clever and so gorgeous. And I looked into the eyes and I knew everything. This is the girl. And I think, from being a girl about town, I suddenly wanted, would you marry me? Like, I wanted this woman.
Your PhD, what was it on? I'm always fascinated with what people's PhDs on.
Memory and salvage, the collusion and collision of anecdote and public record in public art. Now, to do this, I did it at the University of Wollongong back in the mid-90s and discovered it's very hard to hold the same argument for 3 years while you do this work. But what I did was I created several public art installation or permanent sculptures as well to help me understand how that was. So in doing that, I actually kept a record of what I went through making these.
You
pieces.
actually made them, the full scale?
I got commissioned by the City of Liverpool to design a war memorial. So I had to go around and work out this. It was a memorial for Liverpool, which had always been a war-involved site, like the Boer War trained the people on the horses there, the light horse. And there's still a military base attached to it. It's where the POWs were kept during the First and Second World War. And it's where the Gulf War people, and other people from other things first came to Australia, and that's where they were housed.
How did you get that commission? Because it sounds, like one of the things where did it come from?
Can't remember now. The council and the RSL, I think, together.
Right. So you approached them, or did they approach you, or?
I really can't remember.
Okay.
David. There were a lot of different things. At that stage, I was quite well known in Sydney, and I exhibited widely with big galleries and things. So I was peaked early, sometimes I say. So I had a great time with doing it. It was very challenging. It was constantly in the paper about what I was doing and how I was approaching it, and because there was what do they call them? A VC winner, a local VC winner, and I wanted mention of this person in the piece. So, in one of the columns, because it's a series of columns, in one of the columns, it's fallen. It's a fallen column. There's the broken stump here. Which says, lest we forget all the men and women who have served Australia in crisis or something, is the full line. I can't recall it immediately. And then so on the broken body, because a column in art represents a body.
Yep.
So on the fallen body, I had quotes from his mother's diary on the day he died.
Oh, wow.
I had quotes from a letter that was written to me by a veteran from the Second World War. I think he was the Second World War, and he carrying his friend who was dead through a battle.
Yeah.
It just breaks your heart.
Yeah.
So I had that quote as he described what that was like. And I had some other quotes in it on the fallen piece, and then standing around it are a series of columns. The grass was in the Rising Sun badge that they stopped calling it the Rising Sun because of Japan in the Second World War. Oh, right. But originally that's what it was called. And it's the bayonet badge that goes on the side. So that's the pattern the grass was in, and the thing's fallen on. And then around it were a series of columns. And I got people, one of them, two of them, the Sentinel columns, concrete, and I got people to bring forward their memories. So I did a residency at the local museum. People brought forward things that reminded them of the war situation that had brought them to Liverpool. So there were things like, there was a buckle from the Boer War, there was a little tiny television that someone had watched the Gulf War on, there was there was boots from the Vietnam War. There was not hand grenades, the ones that go on the ground and shoot up at you. I forget what they're called.
Landmines?
Landmines from Korean War. All of those sorts of exchanges. There were spears from the local Indigenous war with Macquarie. And so there were all of these things put together in that. And then there was another set of columns.
How did you place it, or was it?
I placed them in what's called airplane plywood, and worked on a chemical formula with a concrete manufacturer so that we could, I had them cast in, or I cast them in a flexible resin.
Yep.
And so they bent.
Yep.
And so they were on the plywood inside. So we put that inside the column form. And then I worked with a concrete manufacturer, their chemists, to develop a product that would allow us to make the mould. So you had an insert, a concave of whatever the object was in the column. It won an international award.
Oh, well, I was going to say, yeah, how was it perceived? You know, like how did
the local community loved it.
Yep.
And hated it. That's memorials do that. It was kind of a community's memory of war rather than this is a war memorial.
Yep. Is it still there?
Interestingly, it was moved because of where it was, because they had it in a mall that was closed, a closed street mall, and they changed their minds at some point, I don't know when, 10 or more years ago, and took it and all the other artworks out and opened the street again. And I got a phone call from the council saying, you know, we have it, do you want it back? Otherwise we're going to destroy it.
No.
And anyway, the local community got outraged.
Yeah.
And they did all this thing, and it's moved. And so I went and helped with the removal and repainted part of it, and did all these things, and had worked with Porter Paints to develop a paint to hold, and they had to find the formula and redo that for me, which they keep on card. So, you know, so we redid that. And at one stage during the new dedication, where they have, you know, full-on military stuff, and it's amazing, one of the speeches was by a councillor who told me that she got on the local council because she'd watched 20 years ago, had watched me working on it.
Oh, wow.
And she loved that whole concept. And so she said, I became a councillor when I discovered they were going to destroy it. So she lobbied from the inside to get it done.
Wow.
So it's an amazing piece. It stands for a lot for people.
Right. So what brought you to Melbourne?
My wife and I had lived in Sydney for a long time, and I'd lived in Sydney for a long time, and I think I had the best of the Sydney years. It was great fun, and I did some amazing work there. But Sydney got kind of mean. Sydney got a bit dirty and a bit, public transport wasn't working very well anymore, and, you know, we lived at the beach and it was gorgeous and we had a great life. But it was just not what it was for us. So we decided to try something new. So my wife went to Ballarat first to run the Australian Democracy Museum, which was one of the earliest digital museums in the world, really. So she was putting a lot of work together on that. And so we moved to Ballarat. She gave me 3 weeks to buy a house because she wanted to actually be there, so I had to fly down and buy a house. Strangely enough, though, as soon as I'd bought it, the museum opened. I was doing a residency, I think in Beijing, because I used to go to Beijing a lot and exhibited in Beijing. And so I took off from Beijing and left there in this house. It was kind of funny and cruel all at once. At one stage, I got this thing saying, you have to come home. Everyone here thinks I'm faking having a wife.
You've had an extraordinary career, all the places I mentioned at the top of the interview. Like, it must blow your mind a little bit, the fact that, you know, how you've pulled it off and how it's all happened for you.
You know, they say the best luck is that you've trained for. So you work at it.
Yeah.
And for instance, someone came to interview me about some of the public artworks I'd done, like Singing Up Stones, which was the first ever projection on the Sydney Opera House. And that was so hard to do, I've got to tell you. We didn't have the technology we have now, and I had to convince a big funding body to fund it, and that we had the gear, right? So I had to go to Las Vegas to learn how to operate it, and the gear came from Paris, and I had to get this company to bring the gear out, and then Customs held it up at Customs. And all the manuals were in French. None of this was helping any of us. But we did it. We did it.
Yeah. So it was all shown on the sales of
the sales of the Opera House.
Wow.
So it was the first time they'd done it. What had happened was I'd won the New South Wales Women in the Arts Award, which is very big in New South Wales. And as the Premier was handing me the gift, he said, the fake cheque or whatever, he said, "So what's your next project?" And I looked behind the windows out at the Opera House and said, "To project on that." And he said, "Oh, that could be arranged, I'm sure." And then one of the women who was on the selection panel, her partner had just become chair of the board for the Opera House. Because they'd had people asking for, 20 odd years if they could project on it, and they'd always said no.
So why did they let you? What was the reason? Was there?
I had a lot of dominoes in my favour.
Right.
I'd just done some of the biggest projections and closed off streets around the city of Sydney.
Yep.
And projected on the Australian Museum and did performances in Hyde Park, and I'd use fire engines through the street and things like that. It was, there was a carillon of bells from St Mary's, and it was all go. So I'd just done that sort of work. And because I'd been the artist in residence at the Australian Museum, I was entrusted with some of our most valuable historic items. So it meant I could handle history, I could handle public space, I could play with new things, I could tell a good story. So all of those dominoes fell. The City of Sydney was behind me doing things because they got great kudos.
Yeah.
They were about to do the Olympic Games,
Oh,
and
okay.
they were like, if we do something like this, people will get used to the idea of this outdoor life. So there was that, and there was all sorts of things, just fell in my favour. And it turned out the new director of the Opera House and I had worked together at the Visual Arts Board 100 years ago.
Right, okay, how funny. So here you are in Melbourne, and you're working out of a gorgeous situation down in St Kilda. Where are you? Where's your studio?
It's in Shakespeare Grove, so it's behind the veggie patch, as it's known, next to the peanut farm.
So it's the old lawn bowls, isn't
Yes,
it?
it's their old clubhouse.
Yeah.
And they've converted it into studios, and there's about 14 artists there, I think. And everyone's like, I'm just amazed to be with this group of people. They're so stunning. And so you get this enthusiasm of people working on their stuff and how they think about things. We rarely comment on each other's work because, you're in this stage of holding things close when you're in the studio. It's not open for discussion at that point. So, but it's supportive. It's supportive in all of that.
You've got somebody to have a coffee with when you feel like having a break or just a chat and stuff, and like-minded people.
Yeah, and we can go and sit in the veggie patch, and the people who run veggie patch are really good. And
you've got so many projects on the hop all the time, don't you?
You have to, as a visual artist. Otherwise you won't be doing anything. You have to have all these projects ready. I've got older. This is a big project that I'm working on now, for me anyway.
Can you tell us, or is it a secret?
No, I can talk about it. It's called Girt bysea. Bysea is in brackets with a line through it, which kind of means we're blindly walking into something. You see the line through as a mask. So it's a bit theatrical. The brackets mention it, but keep it separate from Girt. Girt's one of those words that everyone goes, what's Girt?
Well, it's part of the song, isn't it?
It is. We're girt by sea, it says. But technically, because of the shift in responsibility of oceans, where they shifted, I think in 1982, they shifted the ruling so that instead of being 12 nautical miles, you became 200 nautical kilometres out to sea. So Australia, technically, is more sea than land. Think about that for a minute. We're not only girt by sea, we are sea.
We are sea.
But the thing is, meshed into these things are ideas of folklore, because folklore stands for all sorts of ways of engaging with the world. And so in these works, I've made mermaids the heroes. Because if you think about mermaids and mermen, I guess, whoever they may be, and sirens, their job is really to distract humans from the destruction they're causing in the sea. So, wreck that ship. get them out here on the rocks, you know. It's all that sort of stuff, you know, cut through the nets, and all of those things are how we see them, you know, as beautiful creatures.
Yeah,
So the story of them is protectors of the sea. So that's part of what I'm incorporating into it.
And how are you doing it?
Training up a little AI, as people do.
Right, okay. And will it be on a screen?
What it is, there's a series of things. There's a sculptural neon work at the beginning. Oh, it's got some neon in it. It's a sculptural work. And then there's projections on different things around the grounds of Linden New Art in Ackland Street.
Right.
And it's part of the Solstice. And the reason I've put it on Solstice night is that solstice and equinox are when the tides pull. So it's that moment where you feel the tides literally in your blood. The salt of the world is pulling you.
But what I find absolutely fascinating with all of this, and I can't wait to see it, but how long's it on for?
One night.
What? You know, like all that time and effort for one night?
It'll be a beautiful night. It'll be one to remember, honey.
But is it frustrating for an artist to do it for one? I know it's part of the plan, and it's and when it's happening, but I just think all that time and effort for one night.
It's one night, but it doesn't mean that a separate piece out of it can't travel to another show.
Oh, okay.
Like the bears with the big mermaid projection across them, there'll be another thing, you know. There's Athenas, because I had Athenas to start with, because
of course you did.
I did inflatable Athenas, because I did a big projection for White Night many years ago for the Athenaeum in the city. And so I put Athenas, inflatable Athenas across the front and projected from the Regent Theatre different things about the history of what Athena means.
Yeah.
But one of the stories about Athena, and why I feel fine pulling those ones out to use again, is that when Athens was looking for patron god, they asked both Neptune and Athena what they would bring, and Neptune hit the trident on the floor and said, "I can bring you tides," and brought fish to the edge of the water. And Athena said, "I can bring you water," and hit her spear to the ground, because she's goddess of war, hit the spear to the ground, and out came a stream of fresh water and an olive tree. So that gave them everything they needed.
Hey.
So, yeah, Athena won.
Yeah. And,
So it's what the water wants, is that piece, and it's got a projection on it.
You must lay in bed some nights. I've got this idea, is that what happens?
It is. It is. And, I wake up with it, or I dream I've done it, and then I think, did I do it? Did I do it? Did I do that? I often write stories about them and poetry about it.
Oh, okay.
And this time I'm going to use some of the poetry in costume to read with the
And you're going to
piece.
do it? You're going to read it?
I'll do it myself.
Right.
I'm looking for one other person with some performative things to be with me in that.
Yep. Get an actor.
Yeah. Or a dancer, even better.
Okay. Yep. Sounds good.
Or a physical theatre person.
When's that on?
21st of June.
Right, okay. Put it in your diary, folks. Put it in your diary. We could talk forever. There would be so much more we could talk about, but thank you so much for chatting with us today, and thank you for your incredible mind. It's I wish I had it. I wish I had you. And also the will to continue doing what you're doing. Because it sounds exhausting.
It is exhausting, and there have been a lot of big obstacles, but we just overcome.
Yep, overcome. Yeah, fantastic. Lisa Anderson, thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Thank you, David. It's been a delight, as always, chatting with you.
As always. And thank you for tuning in. I'll be back again real soon. So see you for now.